The little voice that changed everything. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Morrison Tower, casting long shadows across the marble lobby. James Morrison sat on a leather bench near the reception desk, his shoulders heavy with the weight of failure. In his hands, he held a single sheet of paper, the bankruptcy filing that would end everything he had built over the past 15 years. Around him, employees moved through the lobby with uncertainty in their eyes. They whispered in small groups, their voices echoing softly off the polished floors. Everyone knew this might be their last day at Morrison Industries. The company that had once employed over 300 people was about to disappear. James stared at the document. His pen rested between his fingers, hovering just above the signature line. One name, one simple signature, and it would all be over. The factories would close. The warehouses would empty. Families would lose their income, and it would be his fault. He had tried everything. For months, he had searched for solutions, looking through every financial report, every contract, every possibility. But the numbers never changed. The company owed more money than it could ever hope to repay. Bankruptcy was the only option left. The briefcase beside him contained all the final documents. His lawyer had prepared everything perfectly. All James had to do was sign, and the legal process would begin. By tomorrow, Morrison Industries would exist only in memory. James took a slow breath and clicked his pen. The sound seemed too loud in the quiet lobby. His hand moved toward the paper, ready to end 15 years of dreams, hard work, and hope. "Excuse me, sir." The voice was small and gentle, like wind chimes on a summer afternoon. James looked up to find a little girl standing in front of him. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She wore a pale pink dress, and her blonde hair was pulled into 2 small buns that reminded him of bare ears. Her blue eyes studied him with innocent curiosity. "Yes?" James asked, his voice rough from stress and sleepless nights. The girl pointed at the paper in his hands. "You missed this number." James blinked, confused. "I'm sorry. Right there." She leaned closer, her tiny finger hovering over a line of figures on the document. "That number, you missed it." James looked down at the bankruptcy filing. His eyes followed the columns of debt, losses, and obligations. Everything had been checked and double-checked by accountants and lawyers. There were no mistakes. "Sweetie, I don't think," he began. "See." She pointed more insistently at a small notation in the corner of the page. "That one, it's different from the others." For the first time in weeks, James really looked at the document. Not with tired eyes that had reviewed it 100 times, but with fresh attention. The little girl was pointing at an invoice number, a reference code he had barely noticed before. It was marked as unpaid. A debt of $800,000 to a supplier who had supposedly gone out of business. James felt something stir in his chest, not quite hope, but something close to it. He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened his email, searching through months of correspondence. The supplier, Henderson Manufacturing, had indeed closed, but when he scrolled further, his heart beginning to beat faster. There, buried in emails from 3 months ago, was a message he had never seen. His assistant had been out sick that week, and dozens of messages had gone unanswered. The email was from Henderson Manufacturing's bankruptcy trustee. It stated that all outstanding debts to Morrison Industries had been forgiven as part of Henderson's liquidation settlement. $800,000 forgiven, written off, gone, but somehow Morrison's accounting system had never been updated. The debt was still listed as active, still counted against the company's total obligations. James stood up so quickly that the little girl took a startled step backward. He pulled out his phone again and called his chief financial officer. "Rachel, I need you to verify something immediately," he said, his voice urgent. "The Henderson manufacturing debt, 800,000. Check if it was actually discharged in their bankruptcy settlement." He waited, pacing in front of the bench. The little girl watched him with patient interest, as if she had all the time in the world. After 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours, Rachel's voice came back on the line. "James, you're right. Henderson's trustee sent confirmation, but it was never entered into our system. That debt doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed for 3 months." James felt the world tilt slightly. $800,000 would not save the company by itself, but it would change the calculations. It would make a difference. "Rachel, recalculate everything. Every projection, every cash flow analysis. Factor in the corrected debt load and send me the revised figures in 1 hour." He ended the call and looked down at the little girl, who was smiling at him with quiet satisfaction. "Thank you," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Emma," she replied. "My mom works here. She's the cleaning lady." James knelt down to Emma's eye level. "Emma, you might have just saved this company." The next hour passed in a blur of phone calls and calculations. Rachel sent the revised financial projections, and James reviewed them with hands that no longer shook. The corrected debt load changed everything. Morrison Industries was not profitable yet, but it was not as far underwater as they had thought. With the right restructuring, with some strategic cuts, and a focus on their most successful product lines, survival was possible. By noon, James was on the phone with investors he had thought were lost forever. The new numbers gave them enough confidence to reconsider. By mid-afternoon, he had secured a bridge loan that would carry the company through the next 6 months. The bankruptcy filing remained unsigned on the bench where he had left it. As the sun began to set, painting the lobby in shades of gold and amber, James found Emma again. She was sitting near the reception desk, coloring in a book while her mother finished her shift. He approached her gently. "Emma, I wanted to thank you properly." She looked up from her drawing. "Did I help?" "You helped more than you could possibly understand. Because of you, 300 people still have their jobs tomorrow. Because of you, this company gets to continue." Emma considered this, then returned to her coloring. "My teacher says it's important to check your work." James smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. "Your teacher is very wise." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small business card. On it, he wrote his personal number. "When you're older, if you ever need anything, a recommendation, a job, anything at all, you call me. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Emma took the card and studied it carefully. "Okay," she said simply. As James walked toward the elevator, he looked back one more time. Emma was showing her mother the business card, talking excitedly. Her mother looked up, caught James's eye, and mouthed "thank you." With tears in her eyes, James nodded. But the truth was, the gratitude belonged to Emma. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes wisdom speaks with the smallest voice. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is someone who notices what everyone else has missed. The bankruptcy filing went into the shredder that evening. Morrison Industries would live to see another day, saved by the careful attention of a 5-year-old girl who simply noticed a number that didn't belong.